2006 and 2007, I was a bill collector for student loans. I was also in college myself, and I feel like I have a unique perspective on this. I did it for a year and a half, and it was a huge eye opener for me. So, being that age, I was very.
Welcome to Pegasus versus the World, where we take on challenges, comedy, trending topics, and some travel.
City boy, city boy.
All right, man. We're back. This is not sure 1393 on TikTok, and I thought this was unique. As a former bill collector, I have an interesting perspective. Hold on. There is a shady side to student loan industry. Nothing is ever black and white. Student loans. Now, on this channel, I've done some stuff. We've been talking about the housing market, student loans, and different things that affect, I think, just the common person in American society. I wanted to see what she had to hear. I've never really heard a student loan bill collector speak. It's like collections for college stuff. It's crazy. I remember. Anyways, I ain't gonna talk about that right now. I knew a girl who got who used her college loan to buy breast implants. Yo, I'm like, what the is going on? Anyways, you guys, if you're here for it, like, share, comment, subscribe, link in the description of my other channels. If you don't know who I am, I go by the name Black Pegasus, and let's rock. Let's see what she's talking about.
So, back in 2006 and 2007, I was a bill collector for student loans. I was also in college myself, and I feel like I have a unique perspective on this. I did it for a year and a half, and it was a huge eye opener for me. So, being that age, I was very naive to how the world worked. I did not have parents that helped guide me through anything. I was the only one in my family to go to college. I had a very broken household. I didn't have parents that put any effort into showing me anything, really. So working with the student loans, it really woke me up to how much of a scam things are. It woke me up to how fast your debt can get out of control. And it helped me realize that just because you're talking to someone on the phone who represents a company, it doesn't mean they have your best interest at mind. It doesn't mean they want to help you. And it doesn't mean what they're saying is truthful.
Okay, so there's this reoccurring theme because I get a lot of pushback in the comments. A lot of people think I'm crazy, and you'll say a blanket statement like, college is a scam. And it's kind of clickbaity, it depends, right? It depends on what you're going for. Are you going for like a good degree where you can make your money back? Are you just going for communications or something that's about to get phased out by AI? There's a variable there. But overall, this looming theme, I personally watched so many people in my life, and this is before this AI stuff is about to take over. I'm talking about the last 5, 10 years, 15 years, people getting college degrees and being waiters or working at telemarketing companies, et cetera, because they could not get a job with their degree. And I said this on my channel one time, I don't want my kids to go to college and I'm not paying for it. I'm not paying for them to go to college. I have a fund that would have in the past, if I was in the 60s or 70s, went to a college fund. It's going into investments that can compound so they can have money when they get older. That's what I'm doing. I'm not paying for their college. If they want to go to college, they need to be smart enough to get a scholarship. And I will tell them, please don't go into debt because it's just going to F you up. That's what I'm going to tell my kids. That's what I'm going to do. When I say this, people give me all this pushback saying I'm crazy. But the more I dive into this, and we're going to see what she says, maybe I'm tripping. But we keep seeing this reoccurring theme that college is not what they're selling it to be. Now, I'm all for higher education. I'm all for people being smart. And look, I ain't what do they call it? The brightest Crayola in the pack. I'm not the most well-read, artistic, perfect person. I know I'm rough around the edges, but being commonsensical, being resourceful, being communicative, and being able to connect dots has gotten me into the room, man. It's gotten me pretty far in life. And so, all I can do is try to help. Like, I'm similar to her. My parents were great parents. But they worked day jobs. They were just like, work hard. They didn't teach me how to invest. They didn't show me this, that, and the other. All they were like, work hard, go to college. I was the black sheep of the family. I was like, I'm not going to college. My brother did. And honestly, my brother didn't get a job with his degree, and it just is what it is. So, let's see what she has to say. Maybe it's not a scam for the people who are going crazy in the comments right now. I'm just saying, I keep hearing this damn thing more and more. Now, this is from a college debt collector.
So let me talk about how it works on the other side, or at least back then, how it worked. So I worked at a call center, and the call center was like a new building that was built in a town that kind of, there was a lot of poverty there. Like it used to have a lot of manufacturing, but all the manufacturing left. And so there just were a lot of struggling people. Back then it was a tiered bonus structure. So basically the more accounts you resolved, like the accounts that were delinquent or people, meaning people who didn't pay their bills, the more accounts that you resolved and the higher value of those accounts, the more your bonus would be. And like the people with the highest bonuses at the top, like there were a limited number of people who could get those highest ones. So there was this competitive edge of like who could resolve the most accounts, which kind of led to a lot of people, and there were hundreds of people in this call center, kind of doing some shady stuff to get people's accounts resolved. For example, when I was training, they put me on the floor to listen in on a call with a girl. And this girl was like, you probably shouldn't like take notes from me or do anything I say because I've got 4 kids to feed at home. I'm a single mom and I do whatever it takes to get these accounts resolved. So she was doing a lot of things she shouldn't be just to hurry up and get people's payments in or get their account resolved. She would say as little as possible. She would explain as little as possible. We were supposed to read these scripts. Like if somebody was going to put their loans in forbearance or deference, like that's a way to kind of stop payments on your loans for a while, then she wouldn't read the script that we were supposed to read, which kind of told people how their interest would get capitalized. And
So she's not reading the script to things that these people need to know to make a sound decision on what they're going to do next, right? Because I don't know exactly how this works and what she's saying. It sounds like if you go into a certain state with the loan, the interest could go crazy and a bunch of different stuff. But what I want to just speak is from experience, you guys. I did telemarketing for so many years of my life. And when I worked at Future Call, we were selling credit cards, right? And what I started to notice was like I was okay at it. I have a good voice. It's just repetitive talking to people over and over again. But I did notice there are some people, because you get commission for your sales, similar to what she was doing. Same thing, phone work, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I just remember there was a few people, that I've worked with that would take the shady route, right? Where I remember this, they would almost prey on elderly people, getting elderly people to sign up for credit cards. You know what I'm saying? And that was a thing. And I remember some of these cards had these ridiculous interest rates and this, that, and the other. And if you don't really understand what's going on, it is what it is. But I remember people like that. And you know where I worked? I worked at Future Call, which in Future Call, they would put you on different assignments, different projects. So a lot of different credit cards, sometimes I think insurance, just a bunch of different stuff. They train you, then they put you out on the floor. But I also worked at a place, Current. But Current had their own stuff. That was like a legit company. But I also worked for MCI. You guys remember MCI WorldCom? I also did another one. What was the other place? I forget right now. TeleQuest. I worked at TeleQuest. I forgot what the hell I did there. I hated telemarketing, but it paid the best. At that time, minimum wage was $5.15. But when you did telemarketing, you were able to make $10 to $12 an hour. So a lot of people worked in call centers. This was in the 90s, the late 90s, 98, 2001-ish. So anyways, let's hear her out. But I have a little experience with this in the sense of working in a call center for a very long time.
And even though it said that, it was still kind of hard to understand, I guess. But she would just skip reading that, and she would be like, yeah, I can stop your payments for 6 months, and I can even, move your payment date. And, then people who couldn't pay their loans at the time would be like, oh my God, thank you so much. Not realizing when their payments stopped for 6 months, that all the interest that would have accrued on that was going to get tacked onto their original principal amount. So then their principal amount of the loan would go up. So say they had a $100,000 loan, and in that 6 months they accrued $5,000 of interest. Their new loan after the 6 months would be $105,000 plus interest. And you could do these deferences and forbearances, multiple times, like 4 times or more, if I remember right. So someone's loan could go up so significantly. Like I saw people's loans go from like 50,000 to like 90,000. It's just crazy. And then you're paying interest on that.
And that's just from a shady telemarketer, right? Like it's not even like we watched another young lady come on here and talk about how university does this promotion and they promote the fact that if you get a degree, you're going to get a job and here's all the jobs you have access to. And then when you get that degree, those jobs aren't available. Like this has been happening. So it's like they're marketing this to people like, hey, go to college, get your degree, do this, that, and the other. And then you have the loan. Like there's so many issues with the whole college infrastructure. Hey, look, man, if you want to go to college, homie. Go to college, dog. Do you, homie? I'm not mad at it. Do you? Man, I seen this. You know, the concept of interest is really interesting. Interesting. It's a unique thing. When she talks about it, I'm like, I struggle because I want to buy a house, but I'm looking at the interest on some of the type of house. I'm like, God dang, this is more than the house at some capacity, you know, or the same amount, right? Like it's just wild when you're looking at a 7% interest rate over like 30 years with some of these houses that are $500,000, $600,000. You're like, I don't know about that. You know, and then all the big investors say never pay for a house in cash because you need to be investing. But it's just like, I guess I'm still learning, so I'm going to figure it out. But it's like, wow, like, you know, if you could put it down, like you'd save so much in interest. But I guess the concept that I'm always hearing is you don't buy a house to live in. You buy a house to create cash flow, right? You buy a house, buy a couple of houses, create the cash flow, let the people renting your house pay off the house. And then eventually you create, you know, enough cash flow where the cash flow from your investments pay for your house, which is a liability because you can't do much with it. It's not like the greatest investment. It doesn't really compound in the way other things do, like the market, businesses, etc. I've had my most success creating businesses. That's where I've had my best turnaround. Like, you know, putting my money in the market's cool. Actually, Bitcoin and crypto too. Like I've had my biggest turnarounds in creating businesses and the percentage I make back on the businesses, and then in crypto. So I don't know. I'm not saying do that. This ain't financial advice. I'm just saying what has worked for me and lived experience.
I also spent the first part of the time that I worked there in the government sector, and then I moved over to the private sector. And so I had experience with both, and they did operate a lot differently. So this company did facilitate loans for the government, and those were a much lower interest, and those were much better loans to get. The private loans were much more aggressive, I guess. The interest rates were way higher, and they could straight up just garnish wages, and we had access to see like how much property people owned, and so it was just kind of a different world over there. I also just think it's really unfair that we told so many people that they should go into debt to go to college so that they could have a good life, but most of the degrees that people got were worthless, or at least a lot of them. There's so much I could say around this, but like I said, if you guys have any questions, I would love to have more of a conversation about it. But I think the answer lies somewhere in the middle. Like, if you took out a loan, you should definitely pay it back, because I paid back my loans, I budgeted, and you know, I figured out how to do that, and then I made better choices moving forward. However, I was able to catch it in time. Like after I worked there, I stopped going to school because I didn't want to get into this overwhelming debt, but I had that experience as a bill collector before I made that decision. So I also don't think it's fair that these loans ballooned out of control, and then people are just indebted to pay all this money that they didn't even originally borrow. When I worked there, I know you could, if you were in default, you could call and you could like negotiate your debt. So if you haven't tried, I would try calling and negotiating back to your original amount or maybe lower, and getting your interest to stop. Overall, I think these student loan companies need to be held accountable for loaning out way too much money to people who would never be able to pay it back, to the colleges and universities who helped. And to be honest, when I worked there, it really woke me up to just the whole scam of the college and university industry. It's for profit, it's predatory, and though it can have some value, I think it does a lot of harm. Anyways, let me know what you think, and let me know if you have any questions. I would love to keep the conversation going.
So how this is where I first sit. I'm never like I just respond differently to what I see than the average creator or reactor. The first person who needs to be held accountable for this shit is you, right? If I believe, and maybe you weren't taught this, and it is a little predatorial because people are like 17, 18 going into college and might not understand finances. But at a very early age, I started working at 14. I started mowing lawns and I started understanding how to budget. So I never I'm like, bruh, like I'm not even, I remember I applied at Pikes Peak Community College. And then I seen what they're, I was like, hell nah, I don't got money for this. Like I just knew it, I'm a kid. And I'm like, where am I going to get this? I never in my mind. So my mom raised me never a borrower nor lender be. She told me that a million times. I'll never forget that phrase. And I kind of lived by it. So I was just like, nah, man, like I would still, get stuff on credit. And I'll tell you a story about me being in debt from my music career. But so first I take accountability, right? Then if these companies are being predatory, the college, the loan companies, etc., yeah, they should take accountability too. But first, you went and got the loan. You did not have to get the loan. Like, stop it. Stop with this victim bullshit. Like, bro, I get it. You got played. We all get played in life. That's kind of expensive. But anyways, so when I was young, I had to start funding my rap career. So I got a credit card and I started having to buy merchandise so I can tour and sell it and make money, buy studio time, do a bunch of investing into my career, buy CDs, buy t-shirts, bunch of stuff, pay for rental cars so I could travel, pay for flights, trying to build my music career. Long story short, I ended up being about $40,000 in debt. 30,000 was on a credit card, 10 was on a loan. And, it took me forever to pay the shit off, but I paid it off. And you know what? Some of it was a good idea, some of it wasn't. But anyways, the investment into myself paid for itself because what I did was I branded myself and I was able to rebrand a concert company that was successful. Now I'm rebranded on YouTube and social media, which is successful, and I make residuals from that. So overall, it did work for me. But again, if it didn't, I still was going to have to pay off my debts. Well, one thing I will give it to you college folks where I think it's unfair. I've never done this, but I have some homies who have. When I'm talking about this credit card debt that I was in, you know what my option was? I could run it up even higher and then collect bankruptcy, be effed up in the game with my credit for 7 years, and then make a comeback. I could have done that. Now, from what I understand with college loans, you aren't able to collect. That doesn't go away in a bankruptcy. Y'all tap in the comments. Let me know if I'm correct with that. But that's what I've always heard. That's where it gets a little suspect. I'm like, damn. But that's why I'm like, if you know this, you're kind of playing yourself. But I think a lot of people don't know it. So I want to give them some grace. But I do think we have to start looking in the mirror and taking accountability with all this information on social media. Now you can know. So do what you will with that. Anyways, you guys let me know in the comments. Am I tripping? Black P, you a a-hole, dog. You insensitive. You incompassionate. You have no empathy, or like, hey, man, that was middle of the road. I feel you, dog. This shit is wild in these streets. I'm not hating. I'm not saying these people are, bruh, I feel for them. But life is going life. Let me know.
City boy, city boy.